In this section, I want to talk about causal loop diagrams. I realized that I talked about causal loop diagrams previously, though I wanted to include them here in this section just for completeness. A causal loop diagram is a special case of a basic relationship map with the relationships having a well-defined definition of how you should present or label those or identify those relationships. Now this particular relationship map uses a plus and minus notation. There's also an S and an O notation, which was popularized by Sengi in 1990 in the fifth discipline, the learning organizations book that he released. So the advantage of a causal loop diagram is because there is a defined approach or a well-established method for defining the relationships and for labeling the loops as either balancing or reinforcing loops and indicating what the goal is or what it is that's growing as a result of the reinforcing structure. If you tell someone that you're going to send them a causal loop diagram, they have an expectation of what that diagram is supposed to look like when they get it. So whether it's the S and the O notation or the plus and minus notation, they have, as I said, they have an expectation. They understand causal loop diagrams, and therefore they expect that they will understand how to interpret the relationships that you have included in the map. That said, it's still appropriate at times to add additional comments either to the relationships or to the entities, because there are just certain times when the label that you affix to it doesn't encompass all of the thoughts that you had in mind when you affixed that label to the element, or when you said that no wolf adds to the lies. You may have had additional thoughts that are simply not conveyed by just using the plus sign. So that, it's Kumu is nice then because it allows you to add notes to every entity that you create, so that, as I continue to say, every entity in the map or the diagram has a profile page which you can add a type, tags, description, and additional attributes, and those parts of it we'll talk about later and explain in what instances those are likely to be useful, so that if there is something about this relationship that it would be good to convey to other people, you can go ahead and write a description for it. Now, the additional thing that's nice about causal loop diagrams, in that you're defining the loops, and the way that they work in Kumu when you define them, is that if I mouse over the beginning of the label for this loop, everything else dims in the background, so that there's no question about what the pieces of this particular loop are. Or if I go to this loop and mouse over and hold it, it shows me what that loop is. And that loop definition was done, as I indicated before, by selecting an element and then continuing to select all of the elements that you want to be part of that loop. And as soon as you select two or more connections, not elements, connections, the add loop option pops up so that you can define the loop. And once you've defined the loop also has a profile page so that you can write a description of the loop, and that allows one to go from one loop to the next loop to the next loop and actually get a sense of how the story for the causal loop diagram unfolds. And as I believe I have repeatedly said, and will continue to say in the future, that we connect best with stories, not just extensive wiring diagrams of labels and relationships. It's when the map actually unfolds and tells us a story about those relationships over time, it conveys a lot more meaning than simply looking at the map of relationships. So you will before we are finished, you will probably get tired of me talking about unfolding maps as stories as a basis for communicating understanding and meaning to other people. So to do this particular one, this was the relationship map exported, imported, all of the labels on the connections removed, and then the decorate connections was used simply to define the legend so that it showed up down here. So if you look at the perspective for this map, here is the definition in the perspective that ends up causing the legend to show up down here at the bottom. So, all right, hope this has been informative, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.